Hi, my name's Mickey Ferrugiaro, and this is the video class that goes along with my tutorial for the Celebration tape measure. It's a fun little project, very useful, with a little tape measure in there, button release, and we're working it with layered peyote so that we've got a nice mandala on the background, a little cabochon, which is our button on the front, and then a nice layering that goes around. Just gives it that nice feel of being encased. So two color options, our primary or our pastel, and it's a fun thing to make. So let's get started. Okay, so for rows 1 and 2, we need to string 128 beads, and your repeat is 3 blacks, a white, black, white, black, white. And if you string that and then do that 16 times, so you get 128 beads. I'm going to make those into a circle by going through the first 2 of those black beads. Okay? And now we work row 3, which we're going to do all in black beads. That step up put us right in the correct position. So working in the blacks, your blacks will be on top of your blacks. Won't be on top of any of your whites. If you're on top of your whites, you've gone wrong. Okay, so this first row all in blacks, and step up at the end of the row, and we'll come back to start row 4. So here we are after row 3, and row 4 is nice and simple. It's basically 3 stitches in white and 1 in black, or if you like to think of it a really easy way, is so you don't have to count, is white over white and black over black. And you're going to work this all the way around, except you're not going to put the last stitch in. So the last stitch would be a black stitch. You're going to stop right here. So when you've added your last white and you've come through this bead, you're going to pause right there, because we're going to leave a little gap here for the tape measure, for the actual tape of the tape measure to come through. So we're going to leave a 1 bead gap. And we're going to start working in basically not in the round anymore. We're going to be doing odd count peyote. So when we get there, we'll come back and do the turn. Here we are at the end of row 4, and I've skipped this bead, so I'm going to just turn my work, and then I'm going to work this next row, which is all in black. And of course that's a simple odd count turn. That's a simple turn like you would use in even count peyote, and when we get to the other end we will have one of those more complex turns for an odd count peyote. So I'll come back and show you the turn, and once we've done this row, and then you'll be set for a few rows, so you'll be able to get down and bead. So here I am at the end of row 5, ready to do my odd count turn. And if you haven't done odd count peyote before, you'll realize that you need a bead there and you've got nowhere to go with it. So you go underneath the bead that would be underneath, and as you do that, it just pops into place. And now we need to turn around. So we're going to go through that white one, then we're going to turn and come through this white one. Then we're going to go through that second one down on the edge, and then we are ready to step up through the last bead that we added, and we're ready to work our next row. And you're going to work a total of 15 rows in the black and white, so all your odd rows are going to be in just the black, and then your even rows are going to be in the 3 whites, 1 black. So I'll meet you back after 15 rows. So here we are. I worked my 15 rows, and then to show you this next little bit, I worked row 16, and I'm at the end of row 16. And this is when you pop your tape measure in. You want it to be your working side up, your button side up, and you just pop the tape measure in there. And then we're going to join this back up. So instead of turning on this row, I'm going to add that black bead that we skipped originally, and I'm going to work that in and go step up for the next row. So we're joining that back up, and you can see it fits nice for that tape measure to come out. Okay, so the next row is going to be in black beads, and this will just tighten this all up. So just working in the blacks and keep this nice and tight. And just work all the way around. And when we get here again, I'll show you just an extra way to really pull that together. Okay, so keep going on there all the way around. I'll meet you back at the joining point. So here I am at the end of row 17. I haven't stepped up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little turn. I'm going to come through the white bead that's below the one that my needle's coming out of, my thread's coming out of, and we're just going to work across through the joining beads so that we just strengthen that little seam there. Turn it around. As you come back through, come back out of that center bead, the one that we added, and we don't want to come up any further than that. That puts us back into row 16, and that's perfect because we're now going to work a second row 17 using our purple beads. So there you're just going to work into the same beads as you did before, so the row with the white beads, and you're just going to work that second row in there. You see that the beads, they stay on top, and that's why we can work the second layer. Okay, so work around there, and then we're going to step back down into our original row 17, and that's when we start to do some decreasing. So here we are after our second row 17 has gone in. So you can see how those beads stand up from the beadwork. And now we stepped back up through the black bead, and we're going to start working in there and start our first row of decreasing. So what we're going to do is we're going to work 2 stitches in our D beads, and then once you come to the black section where you've got where the down bead is a black bead instead of a white bead, you're going to go through the 2 blacks. So you're going to do a skip stitch. And you're just going to work that now. It'll be 3 beads, so the blue ones are going over the white ones, and we're skipping the black ones. You see that down bead is white, so we're going to add a blue one on top. The next one is a black bead, so we're going to skip it. So you just go through the next bead without adding a bead. And that's where you're going to go all the way around. It'll be 3 beads and a skip stitch. So three of your blue beads, skip all the way around. And you'll be finishing with the 1 blue there to make that into the 3. And I'll meet you back around there. So you can see now, after finishing this row with our beads leaning in, that we've started that decreasing, and it's creating the lip on the inside. The next row, row 19, we're just going to work in our blue beads, and we're just going to be putting 1 in the spaces, and then where we have this large gap, we're going to put 2 of the beads in there. So it works out on the way around is 2 stitches with 1 bead and 1 stitch with 2 beads. and this will just close that up a little bit more. Okay, so we're going to work this round, and then after finishing this round, use that tail thread, and what you're going to do is you're going to treat row 1 on this side. This is the side where we started, so the black beads are row 1. You're going to pretend that's a row 17 and you're going to work a second row 17 in the red beads so that it stands off like our purple ones, so that one will sit on top, and then you'll work these 2 rows using the yellow beads. So you'll work rows 18 and 19 on this side, and that's just so that you've got, it's not going to, lift off as you're working, because you can see that this can happen while you're working. We don't want that to happen. We want to just make it secure on both sides, so that there's no, coming off of the tape measure. Okay, so you work this row, and then you'll work 17, 18 and 19 rows on this side. I will come back after that. So here we are after doing the back, so that we've got this, so it's going to stay on now, our beading is going to stay on, it's not going to go anywhere. So now I've re-threaded my needle on the first side, and we're going to work some more rows. So the next row is just 1 bead per stitch in our blue. That's our D bead, and the next row we're going to work in yellow. So I'm going to work this row, we'll come back to add our spots. So there is row 20, and row 21 we're going to add our spot. So our yellow is going to go over our 2 beads, our pairs. So that's a little bit of sizing down too. And then you'll have 2 stitches in the blue. Okay. So that's how you'll work this all the way around. And then the next 2 rows are just 1 bead per stitch in our blue. So that's this is row 21 with the yellow spots. Rows 22 and 23 are just in D beads. So we'll come back to start row 24. Rows 22 and 23 are now in, and we're ready to start on row 24. And row 24 starts with one of our yellow beads. The spot will sit right in between the other 2 yellows. And basically you're just going to do 2 stitches in blue and the 1 in yellow all the way around. Row 25 is a decrease row, and so we're going to add 1 of our blue beads, and we're going to go through the next 2 blue beads, and then we'll add a blue bead and another one, and go through the next 2 beads. So we're skipping that stitch. So you can see this is what it looks like. And that's all there is on this round. It's basically 2 stitches in the blue beads and a skip stitch. All the way around, and we'll come back for row 26. Row 26 is all done in blue, and we're going to alternate 2 and 1 beads. So over the gaps, you're going to put, over the decreases, 2 beads, 2 of our blue beads. Make sure they sit correctly there. And then 1 in the next stitch. So that's all it is, alternating between 1 and 2 beads per stitch. And once you finish this row, you'll work the next row in blue, 1 bead per stitch. And we'll come back after that. Row 28, and we're going to add another spot. So we're going to work 1 bead in the turquoise, and then we're going to place a yellow bead over our 2 blue ones. And it just works that it's alternating beads. So you're alternating yellow and blue with your yellow going over the decrease stitch. And then after this, you can work 2 rows in the blue. Just 1 bead per stitch. And I'll be back for row 31. Row 31 is another row just in our blue beads. And then row 32 is where we do our next decrease. So you're going to start with a yellow bead, and then you're going to skip through the next stitch. So you're going to go through the next 2 blue beads. Then you're going to add another yellow and skip through the next 2. So it's basically you're working in yellow all the time, and you're working 1 stitch and a skip stitch all the way around. Okay, so work that and then we'll come back for the next one. For row 33, you're just going to work 2 beads per stitch. And then you're going to follow this with a row of blue with 1 bead per stitch. That'll be going in between our 2s. So here we are after row 34, and I haven't stepped up, and that's because we're going to add another row 34, and this time using the red beads. And of course this row is going to sit on top of the other beads. And we'll be using these beads to make the bezel to encase the cabochon. And as you see, as you're pulling this around, you'll see that these beads lift up the beadwork just a little bit as you put those beads in. If I can show you as it lifts. See how it lifts those beads and it turns the other bead inside? That's a perfect ridge for our cabochon to sit in. Okay, so work this row and then we'll add the cab and we will start encasing it. So here we are, and we've done our row. We've created that nice little divot for our cabochon, and we can pop that in. You can hear it pops in, literally pops in. And the next row, we're going to start working with 2 reds into that stitch, and then 1 of our green beads. This is our G bead. And we're just going to alternate that all the way around. 2 reds and 1 green. So here we are with that row finished, and you can see it's started to snug up against the cabochon. For row 36, we're going to work just in our G beads. So 1 bead per stitch, treating our 2 beads as 1 bead, and we're going to work all the way around like this. I've stepped up after row 36 and I'm ready to start row 37. I'm going to start that with 1 of our green beads. That completes our little diamond. You see there, that completes that little diamond shape. And then we're going to alternate our red beads. We're going to put 2 in this stitch, then we have our green, and then we're going to just put 1 red in the next stitch. It's over the 2 beads, but we don't want to close it too tightly. So each red stitch is going to alternate 1 or 2 beads. This one has the 1 bead. Our green. Then we're back to 2 beads. and a green. This is one red bead, and then the green, two reds, a green, and the last stitch is a single red. And I'm going to step straight up after this row. There you go. Okay, so the next row we're going to work entirely in red beads, just one red per stitch. They're like little teeth on the side, just waiting to bite your thread. Okay, so work this row just with one red bead per stitch, and we'll be back to finish up this row with a little scalloping. I finished row 38 and I stepped up as I normally would, but because we're not going to put a stitch in here, it's going to be a slip stitch, we have to skip this stitch. And we're just going to be putting one bead in over that green one. And then we're going to skip the next stitch. And then put another red in. And skip the next stitch. And those skip stitches will alternate between 1 and 2 beads. I'm just pressing it in each time. Make sure the bead goes exactly where I want it to. Oh, forgot how to step up there. Gotta step up. Last step up and our last bead. Now we're not going to step up, what we're going to do is step down because we want to come back out of this outer row. So we're just going to work through the beads of the previous rows. Just weaving down until we exit the base row. The next row, nice and easy, 2 beads per stitch. Working into those base beads. This really kind of consolidates that second layer feeling. Okay, so work this around and we'll come back to put some drops in. So to finish this off, we're going to just add a nice little drop bead. Just one bead going through the 2, treating them as one bead. and it makes a nice little finish to this center cap. Okay, so once you've done this, you can weave your thread in and trim off the excess. So now that we have the front finished and our button is all in, so you can see how it works, pulls that baby right back in there. And now we're going to go back and work on the other side. So we're going to put our mandala on this side. And basically, we're going to work the rows 20 through 28, just as we did for the front, but we're going to use yellow as our main colour and red for our spots. So we're going to work rows 20 through 28, and then you'll have just ended up with a red spot, and then we'll come back, because that's where the pattern changes. So here we are after row 28, and this is where we change the pattern. So what we're going to do in this row for 29 is we're going to work all in red. So it's nice and easy, just every stitch in red. Okay, so work this row and we'll come back to do the next one with another colour change. For row 30, we're going to bring in our H beads, which in my case is a turquoise bead. And it's going to sit right in those red beads. And then we're going to work a red bead. This will complete our little zigzag with the reds. A turquoise and a red. All there is to it, all the way around. The needle's not cooperating. Sometimes when you're working this, getting your needle in when you've got all this space in front, you kind of have to put your needle in and you can give it a twist so that you're pulling in the opposite direction. It helps. If you pull the bead down, that works. Or the twist. Okay, so we'll come back when this row is complete and we'll work on the next row or two. Okay, here we are, and I worked row 31, which was just the H beads, just our turquoise beads, and now this is row 32, and you can see I'm working in red and I'm going through the two turquoises, so we're skipping a stitch here. So as I add my red, I go through the next two turquoise. This will become a little 5-petaled flower, the turquoise. So we'll add the next 2 petals in the next round. So round 33 is just 2 of our H beads per stitch. That gives us the 4th and 5th petals of our flowers. And we're going to step up through that first stitch. And in the next row, you're just going to add 1 red bead between the pairs. Okay, we'll come back for the next row, which will have a little bit of decreasing in it. For row 35, we're going to work a decrease, but it's not consistent in every stitch. Basically, we're going to work 2 beads in the first stitch, 1 in the second, 2 in the third, 1 in the fourth, etc. Just because we don't want it to drop down too fast. We don't want gaps. So once we've worked this, we're going to change colour. We're going to work in our C beads, which for me is the purple. And I'm going to work 1 row with 1 bead per stitch for that row, for row 36. Okay, so come back after you've got your first row of purple in. For row 37, we're going to alternate our beads purple and green. The purple beads are going to sit over the 1 bead space, and the green beads are going to sit over the 2 bead space. So nice and easy to remember as you work around. For the next row, you'll be working in the green, and it'll just be 1 bead per stitch. So you can go ahead and put that row in as well. So we'll come back when we've got this row and the next one done. Okay, so our next row after our greens is a decrease row, and we're just going 1 purple and then we're doing 2 together, so it's a skip stitch. And so how we do that is just 1 purple adding and then going through the next 2 green beads, just like that. And the next row will be 1 bead per stitch, and for that we'll be using our yellow beads, so our E beads. So it'll just be 1 bead per stitch, so it's going to be over the 2 beads, just shrinking it down a little bit more. Okay, so work this row and then work the yellow row, and we'll come back after that. So now we have our yellow beads in. We're going to add a little bit more black and white just to finish the design off. So working into the yellow beads, I'm going to work a row of black, just 1 bead per stitch, and we're down to 8 beads now, so this is not a long row. The yellows may seem as if they're, you know, very loose in the design, but once we get these last rows in, it tightens everything up. And stepping up on the last stitch. And now we're going to work a row of whites, but we're only going to use 4. So we're going to add a white and go through the next 2 blacks. Another white through the next 2 of the blacks. Third white. And our 4th. So our last row is just 4 of our black beads. Oh, we need to step up first. There we go. So our 4 blacks. And when you're putting these in, this will push all those yellows back out. It just pushes them slightly back into the other beads, so that's why I say when they were loose it wouldn't matter because they just get pushed back in. And our last bead, and we're still going to step up. If you can find a little tricky when we get this close in. Putting your thumb on there to smooth those beads down. And now we're just going to go through those last 4 black beads. So we're just going to pass our thread through them so that we can totally finish that circle off. Keep them tight into the center. There we go. And that's the back. And to show you it in the pastel, because I happen to have it right here. This is the pastel version, very delicate. So now we'll work our thread in and work it in, weave it in securely, and then trim off the excess. And then next we're going to start working on our edges, our second layer for the top and the bottom. Okay, so we'll come back to do that. Here we are ready to start the second layer. And when we're starting the second layer, we're working into what I call the base beads, this base row, and we're going to work 2 rows into these beads. One is what I call row 1 outer edge, and one is the row 1 inner. So inner row 1 and outer row 1. Outer row 1 is all done in purple, so that's just 1 bead per stitch. And then we'll come back and do the inner row 1. So don't step up at the end of this row. Work around, but don't step up, because we're going to work straight into those beads again. So work this one, we'll come back and I'll show you the colouring for the inner row 1. One thing I did forget to mention is that you want to start this where your tape comes out. So this bead here, the first bead, is right over the gap that we left for the tape. That's where you want to start your row. It helps a lot when we go further. Okay, so our inner row 1, we're going to start with a yellow bead, and these beads are going to just sit on top. You can see this is how this happens. And then we work 3 stitches in the purple. And this is just so much easier than trying to put these beads in. If you work this top first and then you start doing the side, you just can't get your needle through those beads, through the base row. It just gets, the work gets too tight. Okay, so that's your pattern. Nice and easy. You know that your yellow dots go over your stripes and purple in between. So that's all there is for this row, and you can step up through that first yellow at the end of the row. Okay, so we'll meet you back for that. So now with both of our row 1s in, we're going to start on row 2. In row 2, we're going to add a yellow at the side of the yellow, and then 2 purple stitches, and then 2 yellow stitches, one that sits each side of our yellow bead. And that is a repeat. You'll do 2 purple, 2 yellow, and of course you'll finish by adding that yellow in there. And then step up. So work that row, and then when we come back we're going to be doing some decreasing. Okay, so row 3, we're going to do a little bit of a skip stitch. So you're going to add 1 of the C beads and then skip the next stitch. So you can go right through those 2 purples. Then we're going to add the purple, a yellow, then the purple, and our skip stitch. So through those 2 purples that are in between. Purple, a yellow, and then the purple with the skip stitch through those 2. Okay, so work that one all the way around, and we'll come back to work on the second step of this decrease. Okay, row 4 gives us the second step of our decrease, which is the 2 purples over the skip stitch. That will just bring it down a little bit further, and then you're going to be working 2 yellow beads, and then the 2 purples. And you can see that's bringing it together so that it's laying down against the top of the beadwork on the case. Okay, so work this row and we'll come back and we will do the next one. Row 5 is quite simply a purple, a yellow, and another purple. just so that you're finishing off your spot and you're filling in on the purple. Okay, so finish that, and then when we come back we'll actually be skipping some stitches for our scalloping on the top. Trouble with the beads. So row 6, we're going to work 2 stitches in our purple beads, and then we're going to skip the next stitch. So we don't want anything above that pair of purple beads. So we've got 1, 2 purples, and here we are for that slip stitch. So we're just going to go through our 2 purple beads, our pair, and step up. And then we're right in place for 2 more purples. Then we just keep repeating all the way around. So row 7, which is the final row for the top, it's just our 1 bead and 1 purple bead, and I'm going to go down the 2 beads, and then I'm going to weave through that pair and then back up the other 2. So I'm back into that gap, and we're just going to finish it with a purple bead and weave around again. Okay, so this is how it looks when it's done. Yeah, this kind of lacy look with the decreases as well, which I think is rather nice. Okay, so now we're going to work down the sides, and we're going to work into the outer row 1. So we want to be starting over the hole, so we want to be coming out of this bead. Okay, and I've put a stopper bead on because I'm starting a new thread and I've really nothing to weave into at this point. So a stopper bead on there, and then we're going to work this first row just in our C beads. Okay, so work this row around, and we'll come back and get rid of the stopper bead at the end of this round. Okay, so I'm at the end of the row, and I'm just going to pull off our stopper bead, and then I can add my last bead. And I pull this thread forward so that I can come back to it. I have a couple of threads that I'm going to need to weave in once I've got beads to weave them into. Okay, so we're going to step up after that row, and our next row we're going to alternate colours. So we're going to put the start of our zigzag, our little scallop edging. So we're going to start with 1 of our purple beads and then 1 of the yellow beads. And you'll see this sits right in between our spots. And that's going to be the height, the point of our scallop. So our little zigzag's going to go this way. Okay, so it's once you've got that started, it's 3 beads, 3 purple and a yellow. There's our 3 purple and our yellow. And you can work that all the way around, and then you're going to step up with this being a skip stitch, the stitch that's over where your tape comes out. You're just going to come through here and then step up to come out this bead. Okay, so step up at the end of this row after skipping that last stitch. So here we are at the end of row 3. I have skipped this stitch and stepped up. So now I'm ready to start row 4. In row 4, we're going to add 2 yellows will sit at the side of the existing one. And then 2 purples in between. And this row, we're not going to work all the way around. When we get to the last bead, we're going to stop, we're going to turn, and we're going to start working in odd count peyote. So we'll work all the way around, then we'll stop and turn. I'll come back to show you that. Here we're at the end of row 4, and we're just going to do that really nice easy turn for peyote. And we're going to start with a yellow. And we're going to skip the next stitch, so we're going to go through those 2 yellows. Just skip that stitch. And then we're going to work a yellow, a purple, and another yellow. And then we're at our skip stitch. Okay? So you can do this all the way around, and when we get to this side we're going to have the complex odd count turn, so I'll come back to work on that. At the end of row 5 we have what I call the complex odd count turn. I've added my last yellow bead, and I'm going to go back through the purple one and the yellow. So I'm turning. And then we just want to pop that little yellow bead so it sits correctly. There we go. And then you come back through those 2 purples. Okay? And then we can step up through the bead we just added. Okay, now for row 6 we're going to start it a little bit different. We're going to add another bead on here. So all we're going to do is just come through that bead again. It's like a little ladder stitch, just to add that bead. Okay, and then we're going to step up and weave through our yellow beads till we get through to our gap. Make sure our thread doesn't get caught. Oh, it wants to wrap around that bead. There we go. Okay, so here we've got 2 beads right here, and then we're going to step down, weave up, and then another 2 of our yellow beads, and step down, and then step up. Okay, and work that all the way around, and then at the end we're going to add another little dangle bead right there on the other side. Okay, so I'll meet you there to do that. Okay, so at the end of row 6 we're coming out of our end yellow, and we're just going to add another yellow and go back through that bead again so that we have a ladder stitch, and our beads will sit down there. To turn, we're going to come up through these 2 purples, and then we're going to go straight down all of the yellows. Missed one. All of those to that 1 bead gap, and then we're going to add our yellow in there and weave back through again. Down and up. Okay, and once you've done all this, filled all the holes in, you can weave your thread in because we're finished with this side. And then what you're going to do is you're going to work this on the other side, and then you're going to work this section on down here, and work through so that you've got it to the same level, so you'll be finishing with the points, and then we'll come back and we'll join those points together. Okay, and then the base will be finished and all we'll have left to do is a tab. Okay, so now we're going to join the 2 scallop edges. And we're going to need a bead in between. So we're just going to do like we did before, ladder stitching the bead in. Get this baby to sit straight, there he goes. And then you're going to come back through and ladder stitch to the other bead, to the other side. And go through again. And you're going to weave back down. And it doesn't matter which side you weave on. But the main thing is you're going to weave through. So that's going to be our end. And that black bead just kind of fades into the stripes. So you're going to weave to the point. You're going to add a black. Going to ladder stitch it in there. Make sure he sits correctly. There we go. Then come back through the yellow, back through the black, and then weave down through again. Just make sure that sits nice and tight. Give it a good tug. And you see it just disappears. But it holds your points really nicely. If you wanted to fancy it up, you could put a little crystal in there, you know, like a 2mm fire polish. Something like that if you want to add a little sparkle. And that's basically all you do all the way around. Finish the other end the same way as you did this one. There it goes, make sure it lays in. And once that's done, we're all ready to just do the tab. Okay, so I'm going to finish off joining this and then we'll come back and we'll make the tab. Okay, so now we've got all the edges finished, we're going to work on the tab. And you want to pull your tape out so it stays quite a bit, because you don't want it accidentally to run back in and lose your end when you've got nothing on the end to stop it from going right inside. So then you're going to just snip this off, and you want to snip it close to the tape side, and it's really quite easy, and just pull that through. There we go. So that's our tape end off. Okay, so now we're going to go up through that hole. The sooner we get our thread on there, the less worry there is about it rolling back inside. Okay, and now we're going to add beads. So we're going to add white, black, white, black, white. Okay, so there we've got our 5 beads, and then we go back up, so we're forming a loop. Okay, so that's one side, and then we can do the same thing again. White, black, white, black, white, and we're going to go through again. So there we've got it 2 sections. Okay, and we're going to come through again so that we're exiting on the side, and then we're going to add 2 black beads, going through all of our beads again, and then we're going to add 2 more black beads at this side and come all the way through this side. Okay, so we filled our edges in there. Okay, so as we come out of the first black bead of the pair, we're going to add 2 of our B beads, our white beads, and we're just going to come through that black bead. And now we're going to work around. So this is our left side, and we're going to work in the turquoise, our H beads. So you're just going to put 3 in, come through the first black of that side pair, add 2 of the whites and go through the second one of the pair, and then you're going to work 3 in the red beads. So coming through the black, and stepping up through that white bead, the first one of that pair. Okay, so we're basically working little circles. Our next row, we're going to start with 2 blacks, and then we're going to work with our turquoise on this side, and there's 4 beads in on that side. Add our 2 black over to the other side through that 1 white. Turn this around. I'm going to work on red on this side. And then we're going to step up through that first black that we did for the row. Okay, so you see how we're working our little circles around. Our next end beads are white. And then we're going to work 2 turquoise, and then a purple on this side. Then our 2 turquoise, 2 whites on the end through our black, and then we're going to work 2 red, a green, and 2 more red. And of course we're stepping up because that's the end of our row. Okay, so you can see how we're getting this to look. When we pull this, our tail thread tight, we're going to weave that in, and it'll keep it really nice and tight to the tape measure. Okay, so next row, we start with our 2 blacks. See, we're getting a nice little black and white stripy effect going on. And then we're going to work 2 turquoise, my tail thread caught there, there we go, and then 2 purple, and 2 more turquoise. I'm going to flip this over so it's easier for me to work. I'm working on the other side now. Our 2 blacks in the end, 2 reds, two greens, two more reds. And on the last one, we're going to step up through the first bead of the row, which was the black one. Okay. There we go. Okay, now we're at the center point for our dot. We're going to put one in here, and that'll be our center row of our little spots that we're putting on. And so we're only going to add one bead in, because from this point we're going to start decreasing. So I'm just putting one white in the end, and I'm going to work my turquoise, just 3 turquoise, oops, one at a time. Then you have a purple in the center, and 3 more turquoise. Okay, turn this around so it can work. Just one white in the end, and then our reds. So the same thing that you're working on one side, you work on the other side. So it's 3 reds, one of our green beads, and 3 more reds. So go through our black, and then we're going to step up through our white bead. Okay, so this is where we're at. That's what it looks like from the top. It's taking shape nicely. And our next row, we're going to work in black. So you're going to just work one black, because we're going to build up to that 2 again. And then our turquoise, 2 turquoise, 2 purple, 2 more turquoise, and a black, and through that single white bead on the end. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side, just changing our colors. Our 2 greens, and our 2 reds. Finish with your black and go through that single bead on the end, and then we need to step up. Make sure that bead sits there. So this is what we're looking like on the top. See this here? And we're stepping up through that black bead. So now we're really going to start the decreasing. You're going to start with a white bead, and then you're going to work 2 in the turquoise, 1 in the purple, which will complete our little spot. You see, our little spot's completed there. 2 more turquoise. Oh, our thread caught everywhere there. There we go. Our second turquoise, and then it's the white through the black, and we're turning, going through that other black, and then we're working the red side, which we start with white. 2 reds, 1 green, 2 reds, finishing with a white. We're going to turn and step up through the black and the white beads. This time we start with a black, and then we just have turquoise across. We don't need any more purple beads. So you have 4 turquoise going across, then a black through the white bead and turn going through the other white bead. Then work the other side exactly the same. So black, 4 reds, and when we get there we'll have another black. And there's our black. And our turn going up through the white and the black, so it's a turn and a step up. And here we're starting with a white, and we'll just have the 3 turquoise, another white. Oh, here we go. Turn through our black, and then our white, and our 3 reds, finishing with a white, and then our turn and step up. Starting this row with a black, and we're down to 2 turquoise, another black, our turn onto our other side, our black bead, two reds, a black through the white, then we're going to step up, turn and step up through the white and the black, one white, one turquoise, and one white, turn, one white, one red, and another white. Then we have our turn and step up. This row is all black, so you're just going black and black on this side, turn, black and black on this side, turn and step up, and then we're going to do a shared bead, a white bead. In there we're going to turn, we're going to go through that same white bead, so it just kind of finishes it without having it too thick at the end. Then we go through our black, and now we can weave this thread in and we can weave our tail thread in, and that's our tab completed. Okay, so I hope you had fun with this project, and I'm sure this is going to be a very popular gift this year, our beaded tape measures. I'm Mickey Ferruggiaro. Thanks for doing my tutorial, and I hope you'll try some more.